Let me get the date. It's January the 8th, 2017. This is Ron Avery, and it's Sunday morning. I wanted to cover some of the more recent things that have happened in my lawsuit against the Houston Chronicle, the owners, Hearst Communications Incorporated, and Dylan Baddour, who was the news reporter that wrote a story that I believe I can prove libeled me. And to talk to you about how important this is and what is happening in the law regarding journalism. Some things have happened that are very important. Just recently, the Trump election has caused the journalism community to question what its real role is. Some of them felt like some even said they weren't going to cover him because he was so different and so bizarre. They called him a sideshow, a circus or something, and they wasn't serious, and so they weren't even going to cover him. Well, and then some people, there was this beautiful lady, Scarlett Fakar, I don't know how you say it, it's Fakhar, and she said on her Facebook page after the election that how happy she was that Trump got the election, that she was won the election, and she was praying a lot about it, and then, you know, said some negative things about the Obama administration. And what's amusing, I find really ironical about this, is that the Houston Chronicle picked up on her comments made on her Facebook, her private, at least her own personal Facebook page, and kind of exposed all that and said that she shouldn't be doing that, you know, implied that she shouldn't have been doing that, you know, revealing her personal opinion about news that she covers. And this really is, and then she apologized for it. She said, I profusely apologize for that. I shouldn't have done that, and that was an error and all of that. Then later she, you know, tried to defend herself, and I think she has some merit in this. She tried to, you know, she showed that the liberal news commentary, not commentary, but the news reporters, she says, express their opinions about it, and they don't get in trouble about it. They don't get fired. But when she's a conservative, she expresses her opinion. She gets fired. There may be some truth to that. I think she could probably show that in some cases. But to go to the real heart of the matter is it's taught in journalism schools throughout everywhere, and it's pretty much understood by everybody in the profession. I've researched this. I've gone on the web and looked up several journalism companies, the Associated Press, AP, PBS, Public Broadcasting System, and some of the professional organizations related to journalism. And all of them say that you should not become involved in, you're not a participant in the events you cover. You're not to reveal your own personal views on it. And in the media business, this is to preserve the notion that you're unbiased in coverage of news. And this is just kind of most people just kind of take that for granted, and that's kind of how they do it. Well, Fox News, this Scarlett Fakar, is actually fired. She was a Fox News anchor in Houston, and she was fired for expressing her views about Trump and Obama and the election on her personal Facebook page. But you see, I'm gonna show you what is ironical about this, because I sued the Houston Chronicle and a news reporter named Dylan Baddour, and of course the Hearst, the owner of it, and I sued them for libel because they had told some lies in an article, and then they built upon these lies. They brought in other articles. They did 2 articles, one on the web and one front page article that went into the back pages, but it began on the front page, and of the Houston Chronicle. And the event he covered actually took place 5 months before this article came out anywhere. And instead of, and I'll get to some of the, I'll just kind of generally, I guess, cover what they had done here. First of all, I held a meeting at a building I owned, and it was this group of people that met there are called the Republic of Texas. They call themselves the Republic of Texas, and they're kind of they consider themselves to be the government of the Republic of Texas, and their view is that Texas was never really properly annexed into the United States, and it's been a republic ever since. It became a republic that was recognized by several treaties of foreign countries, and France and Germany and England and Scotland or whatever, and they and other countries too, and Indian treaties as well. So they don't believe that, and one of their hallmarks is that they're not in favor of, right now it's real popular to talk about secession, and they're opposed to secession. That's one of their trademarks, is because they don't, why would they care about it? They don't even recognize the state. And then I had them meet at this building I owned, and then I gave a speech at it, because since I knew they did not promote secession, which was real popular and still real popular. People talk about it all the time. And I'm opposed to it because I believe that the federal government is dissolved. I can believe I can prove it and show it. Anytime you have constitutional government and the terms of it are changed by law without required amendments or the approval of the people through their states, then you've dissolved it. They've lost their authority. And that's why it's important to protect the Constitution, because if you don't protect it and the terms of it, it's dissolved. If you don't want it anymore, that's how to do it. Just let it be altered without the required means. And you certainly don't take the complaint to the very government that's dissolved itself, because they no longer have authority to rule in the matter. You don't take that before the Supreme Court of the United States. They don't have authority to review it. So, and if this wasn't true, if this wasn't the way constitutional governments are dissolved from within, then God, or actually Satan, has perfected tyranny on the earth. Because if this isn't the way it works, if once you form a constitutional government, it's there forever, no matter how it's perverted and altered without the permission of the people, then you've enslaved the people where they cannot free themselves lawfully under the system. Because, those that altered it certainly aren't going to want to change it back. They had a reason for changing it in the first place. They don't want to give that up. So I believe that that's the way it works, and I believe that I can prove that. John Locke, I got all these theories from John Locke, Second Treatise of Government, published in 1689. Okay, well, there's the background. I'm not a secessionist. I've spoken against secession. I've written against it. I've shown why, because I believe that the federal government is dissolved. I've observed it is, and you don't secede from a dissolved anything. It's, again, like getting a divorce from a dead spouse. It's absurd. And that's why I'm not, it's an admission that the thing you want to secede from is lawfully existing, and you want their permission, or you're going to declare that you're out of there or whatever. And but I'm opposed to it because I'm not for admitting any of that kind of stuff and pretending and relating to it as if it was a lawfully existing. So that's the thing that the Republic of Texas and I have in common. I'm not a member of the Republic of Texas. I've never been a member of the Republic of Texas. I know some of the people because we have things in common. I associate with them. And I have a constitutional right to freedom of speech, association, and petition. And these things are covered in a new act that was passed in the Texas legislature. Or Congress, maybe both houses, I don't know, and it's it's called the Texas Citizens Participation Act, and it is supposed to protect those who can show that if they're sued for libel or whatever, it doesn't have to be for libel; it can be for other things. They can prove it's a SLAPP suit. SLAPP is SLAPP. It means it's an acronym for strategic lawsuit against participation, against public participation. So it's SLAPP. And this thing also says that it is to help defend those rights of free speech, association, and petition, and also preserve an individual's right or a person's right to bring a legitimate lawsuit that if he can prove that it's not a SLAPP suit and that he has all the elements of the suit they're bringing. And that's the purpose that this act was passed under. But I'm going to show you today that this act has got some bad provisions in it. It's got really two that I see that are very serious. Number one is it defines in the act, which I don't think it should. It should either be very specific and and give you some real definition to it, or it should not have any definition of that at all, of what proof of actually expression of freedom of speech, association, and petition, because with this very broad definition it gives, and very non-specific, it's allowed a lot of news reporters who are not commentary. You know, there's two kinds of news people. There's people that do commentary, and it's known that they're giving you their opinion right up front. That's, talk radio, talk TV, like, stuff you see on cable TV programs, and O'Reilly Factor and things like that, and Sean Hannity. All these are talk TV, and some of them have talk radio. This is commentary, and this is a known fact that these people are giving you their opinion. And there's more leeway for that, and it's known that these people are exercising their freedom of speech. But this does not apply to news reporters, news anchors, and that kind of thing, where they're simply reporting facts about some, generally, other people expressing their freedom of speech, association, and petition. Well, in this, so what has happened, this act passed in 2011, and what it allows them to do is use, and let me give you the definition of the expression of these freedoms. They give, and I'm going to quote it, a communication, quote, a communication regarding a public concern, end quote. So if they can just show that the article they wrote related to a public concern, then under this particular act, they've shown without doubt they met the threshold burden of proving that they were exercising their freedom of speech, association, and petition. Well, this is absurd because you could communicate other people's, you could communicate anything about a public concern. It wouldn't necessarily be your own opinion. It wouldn't be your own freedom of speech. It's just you made a communication. And if it, you know, if you're a news person, you're supposed to be telling true facts about a situation. Well, Dylan Baddour attended this meeting we had, and where I gave a speech, about a 25-minute speech on dissolution. That's what the subject was. It wasn't secession, it was dissolution. And so he comes away, and 5 months later, and this is interesting, this meeting was held on April the 11th, and they published this article on the web on the weekend of 9/11, 2015. And on the 13th was Sunday. See, I think Friday was the 11th, and 12th was Saturday, 13th was Sunday, and 14th was Monday. So on the 13th, he uploads a web article, and the title of it, I better get it somewhere. It's kind of lengthy a little bit. Let's see if I can get it here. I don't think I have it quite handy here. But it's, maybe I do. Yeah, here we go. I think it's right here. Yeah, here's the title to it, to the whole thing. If I can get it up here, I'll read it to you just the same. It says, ever hopeful and determined Texas secessionists face long, long odds. Well, that happens to be a picture of me there. That's me giving my speech up in front of the group there. I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of a big sheet here. Okay. And we're not secessionists. There wasn't a secessionist in the building. Nobody talked about secession that whole day. I think I mentioned it one time just to say that I was against it, that kind of thing, in this paper. And so he writes this article, and the basis of the article is that we're secessionists, and that we were meeting and talking about secession. And then, using this lie, he builds upon it by attaching other articles that weren't written by him that, could have been totally true. That he talked about the Texas nationalist movement, who sent an individual that was a member of it, went to Russia to meet with a far-right confab, consisting of fascists and neo-Nazis, to rail against Western decadence. And that's the way the article started. I've got it right here. And I believe I have it. Yeah, there it is. And so, I don't know if you can get it in there. That's the title of it. And this is written by Politico. And, there was some truth to the article, but, and he attaches it to his article he does on me and on the Republic of Texas, claiming that we're secessionists too. Kind of like that's what we do. That's what secessionists do. Then they attach another article. I believe we got that right here. Yeah, that follows here. This is called The Growing Right-Wing Terror Threat. Yeah, that's written by the New York Post, I believe. No, I'm sorry, the New York Times, not the Washington Post. This is the New York Times. And there may be something to that too. I'm not debating whether some of these articles are true or not, but they don't apply to me, and they don't apply to the Republic of Texas because we're not secessionists. And So you see, he lumps us in, and then the front page article on the Houston Chronicle had a picture of some guy wearing a Republic of Texas jacket, and I don't think I have a picture of that. I don't know if I do or not. I can't remember if I have one. I don't think I do. I didn't. That wasn't really important in this particular thing I have here. But anyway, so you can see that it had a false. First of all, they also said the front page picture had a picture of me. Now it had a picture of a guy wearing a Republic of Texas jacket. Now I don't own a Republic of Texas jacket. I've never been a member, and the guy in the picture wasn't me. Well, they said it was me. Under the picture, they said it was me. There's Ron Avery, and he said that, and the quote under the caption under the picture said, the members of the Republic of Texas have formally, informally, and formally denounced their U.S. citizenship. And well, I've never done that. And it says, and it said as can be seen by Ron Avery's jacket. It's something like that. I mean, I could get it out here if I had it all here and read it to you verbatim, but it's real close to that. And so I never informally or any other kind of way denounced my U.S. citizenship. I'm not a member of the Republic of Texas. I don't have a Republic of Texas jacket. I know some of the people. We have a thing in common, that we're both against secession. That's what our unity is. And we're just associated. And I have a freedom to do that, a right to do that. And but see, what they've done is this right-wing terror threat is based on a group being right-wing. Well, why did they attach it to the article that was written about us? Because they showed that we were right-wing. And how did we become right-wing? We became right-wing by being secessionists who go to Russia and join in on Putin's. Can you imagine Putin's plot to get Texas to secede? And we join with far-right confab with fascists and neo-Nazis. Well, can you get any further right than a neo-Nazi and a fascist? Well, no. And so, and what are the radical right, and the right wing terror threat? And what they said in this article at the end of it is that it's even greater than the Muslim threat in the United States. And what have we just got through seeing? We see terrorism, or it's shown in the news media. People, the thing in San Bernardino, and now we've just had one in Florida, and all these shootings, and it's all said to be terrorism. Well, now, and now they're saying that right wing is the most terrorist, is the greater danger, greater than Muslims. Well, what did Muslims? What is the news media claimed did 9/11? The news media, the mainstream media, claims that 9/11, the destruction of the World Trade Center, killing over 3,000 people, and attacking the nerve center of the defense of America, the Pentagon, crashing a huge 757 passenger jet into it. And now I'm worse than that? Yeah, that's what the implication is. You can see there is an agenda going on in the mass media. Mainstream mass media is trying to get the American public to believe that there is a terrorist threat, and it's not overseas anymore. It's right here at home. And guess who it is? It's you. Yes, sir. It is you. You are the terrorist threat. Your neighbor, over there, over here, everybody you come in contact with is a potential terrorist, and probably up to it. Why? Why do they want to do that? They want to do that so they can have and institute a police state. and maintain the parts of the police state they've already put in place, which is already fairly entrenched. So they don't care what kind of an event happens. They sell it they spin it as a terrorist event, and everybody becomes a terrorist. And then that's basically what they implied in this article. They first told a lie. The lie of the article is the premise of it. The premise of the article is a lie, that we're secessionists. Then they build on that with other articles attached to it, that we're secessionists. That's the lie. Secessionists are right wing, and then right wing are the terrorist threat worse than Muslims. That's what the article was about. Well, the next thing, this act, first of all, the act lets them have a motion to dismiss, which stops the entire lawsuit, and you can't do any discovery or anything once this happens, once they file a motion within 60 days for a motion to dismiss under the Texas Citizens Participation Act. And all they have to do to prove that what they were sued for was an expression of their freedom of speech is that they made a communication related to a public concern. Well, what was the public concern? Well, anything, government, people talking about the Republic of Texas, or be talking about the lawfulness of the state of Texas, or talking about anything, basically anything that might have something to do with society you're living in. So who could argue with that? Sure, it had some kind of public concern. Now, the next thing it does is that the really worst thing, it's got some pretty tough parts in it. The worst part about it after that is that if the person loses the motion, and they don't just stop it there. I mean, it's not, that's it. If you lose the motion, the loser, the one who brought the lawsuit and had it dismissed under this act, they have to pay the defendant's attorney's fees, all the costs of the defense, all the expenses, even attorney expenses, and they have to pay sanctions on top of that. And the sanctions are to prevent you from ever filing a suit like that again. You get punished for defending your name, defending your reputation. This is a bad thing. And what did they do in my suit? When they call me a terrorist, when they imply with all this crap that they wrote that I'm a terrorist, I felt like I had to defend myself. I'm not a terrorist. I'm an observer. I haven't done anything. All I do is I talk and I observe and I read and I apply principles. And I've learned something. And I've learned that this thing is way out of control here. This thing is tyranny, and now the government and the law is protecting tyranny and protecting the news media that's creating the tyranny, that's backing it up. We can't have this. We can't continue to have this. It's going to get worse and worse. The news media can spin any kind of story they want to, and it can be lies throughout, and build incredible stories that are not true and harm people. And under the Texas Constitution that we have right now, whether we lawfully conform to it or not, says that you have a right to bring a lawsuit for damage to your reputation. It's Article 1, Section 13, and have due course of law applied. Well, you can't have due course of law if you can't even have a jury before your peers. You can't even have a discovery of the thing, and you have to you get it dismissed. So there's the third part of this act, which it says that you have to have a certain weight of evidence. So that apparently in So here's what happened in my case. We had a 15-minute hearing, which wasn't worth anything. It was, and then the judge took it under advisement, and I thought he was going to study it. Well, he came back the following. It was over the weekend. He heard it on a Thursday or Friday, and on Monday or Tuesday he had it all done, and he just said, yeah, granted, motion granted. So that threw me out of there. 15 minutes, and I'm out of there. So then, and he did something very strange that showed to me he didn't study anything. He didn't know anything about the act or any of it. And here's what he did. He granted the motion, but see what happens when a winning side in a lawsuit, they normally write up the order that the judge signs. Well, in this case, then the defendant won the motion to dismiss, so he wrote up the order and sent it to the judge. And the judge looked at it and it said, dismissal, and so he approved that. But then it said award that they should be awarded their mandatory attorney's fees, costs, and expenses, and he scratched that out. He scratched it out and initialed it. So he denied their request for attorney's fees. Well, what happened there? See, he didn't know those were mandatory under the Act. If he would have known they were mandatory under the Act, he wouldn't have scratched that out. So what does it mean? It means he didn't even read the Act. He didn't know anything about the Act. He didn't study the Act. He didn't study the case. So now I'm off to the Fourth Court of Appeals. So what happens? I appeal and say that there was no reason to dismiss that thing, that I had a legitimate lawsuit. I have evidence of defamation by statute, by per se, meaning on its face it's defamation under the statute. The statute for defamation says it's a communication made that whether through graphics or language and written material that tends to, not even does, tends to blacken the memory of a deceased person or to harm the reputation of a living person, that exposes them to public hatred, ridicule, and contempt. Now that's the statutory definition of libel, of defamation, actually. That's a defamatory thing, defamation. Libel is when it's written. Slander is when it's said or stated. But this was a definition, basically, of defamation. So I have proof of defamation. First of all, they claimed that they implied that I was a terrorist. Now I don't see how you can get much worse than implying that somebody's a terrorist. That's pretty. Nobody has a right to go around doing terrorism. And the result of the article achieved what I believe the article was written for. This article was saved for 5 months. First of all, in journalism, saving an article that happens for 5 months and then putting it on the front page journalism calls a 5-month-old article about a meeting cold news. That's just a cold story. That thing is cold. It's ice. It's so far from when it happened, it's not news. So what did they do there? What was that about, having an article 5 months later? Why was it put on 9/11? It's really obvious about the right-wing terror, growing right-wing terror threat. Come on, folks. Am I supposed to believe these judges are that stupid that they don't understand that? You don't say that. You don't go to a meeting and hear about some old men talking about what is the state and Republic of Texas and this and that, and then wait 5 months. Put that on the weekend of 9/11. All the churches are having memorials for the 9/11. acknowledging the soldiers, and they're talking about 9/11 and all this stuff. And then you come out on the front page on Monday morning with this story. It's a terror threat. It was a warning. It was a terror. It was designed to get the result they got. In the blog, right under their online article, several of the people said that I should be the Republic of Texas. These people, which I was shown as, even my name was used in the article. I have a picture of me. My picture's still in there, and shown as a member of the Republic of Texas standing at the microphone. The caption under the picture of me today on there says, the Republic of Texas, they follow an order, and one at a time at the microphone. Well, there I am, and they have a picture of me at the microphone. It shows I'm a Republic of Texas member. Still on there. The courts won't even stop them from libeling me with their graphics. So they say we ought to be sent to Gitmo, rounded up, sent to Gitmo, and be waterboarded, be given the enhanced interrogation. That's waterboarding. Well, that's not love. That's not an expression of love. That's an expression of public hatred. They've identified us as terrorists, like the people that would tear down the World Trade Center, blow it up, crash into it with a jet. And this was what they wanted to do with the article, and they got it. They got what they wanted. 40% of the comments afterwards expressed public hatred, ridicule, or contempt for us. Now, nationally, it's well known, and studies have been done on this, that 60% of the people don't trust the mass media anymore. 40% of them do. Well, okay, there was only 23 comments. People quit commenting on it, especially after I put a comment on there that said, I'm going to sue you guys for libel. I'm thinking about it because I'm the guy in here, and I know better than all this. This stuff is a lie, and I'm going to sue you. Well, they quit putting things on there, because who would want to read those and then get in a lawsuit like this? They're afraid they'd be involved in it too. So there's only 23 comments left. I'm one of them. And then they claim that here's what, there's the act over here. I've talked about the act. Now we're going to talk about the laws, the common law, case law in Texas, and how some of it is being perverted in my case. The first part is that so in the Fourth Court of Appeals, they came out and said, well, it's a matter of law. Whether something is defamatory or not is a matter of law, and the judge is the only one that can figure this out, and he is to apply what they call the reasonable, the ordinary, average, reasonable reader standard. Well, first of all, I got to ask you, when is a judge an average, ordinary, reasonable reader? Judges that probably have read numerous libel cases too. I mean, these guys are not the average, ordinary, reasonable reader. They're trained readers. These guys are trained in the law. And why not say that? Why don't you have an expert read it, right? Well, these are experts, not ordinary readers. And the idea is the statute says, are they exposed to public hatred, not judiciary hatred? Are they exposed to judiciary? No, they didn't say that. They said public hatred. Well, I have evidence of the public hatred. It's right there on the website. They said ought to be sent to Gitmo and be waterboarded. That's not love. That's hatred, man. So what they said, the judges got rid of all my evidence. They just dismissed all the evidence showing that I'd been defamed and that there was public hatred expressed resulting from the article. They just got rid of the evidence. Poof, just like that, because they're the average, ordinary, reasonable reader. And they didn't find any. They thought it was A-okay to say all that kind of stuff. And they essentially rewrote the article. They went through, they said, they said Ron Avery's the only one that got the idea that the article could be construed to be defamatory, or that I could be a terrorist. Only one. 40% of the comments left were that way. I wasn't the only one. I got it. Yeah, I did get it. I'm going to put myself as part of the, well, if I included myself, it'd definitely be right at the 40%. It was 39 or something like that. So that'd be 10 comments out of 23 that saw that it was a defamatory article, that it was bad news. And 60%, they didn't contest whether or not we were the truth of the articles, because they didn't know the truth. They didn't know whether we were secessionists or not, or any of that. They didn't know that. All they did was read the article. But they questioned the media. They questioned whether or not some of the other comments, they basically were related to the other commenters that were leaving comments. They were, in a way, they were kind of defending us and stuff. But that was the people that just simply don't believe the news media. Well, if they keep this stuff up, nobody's going to believe the news media. Why should anybody believe the news media? To get away with this. See, what are we talking about these days? Fake news. What is fake news? That's when they do stuff like this. Something happens, and they tell some truth about it, but then they tell a bunch of other lies about it too, and they spin it off, and they design the news, they engineer the news to achieve their agenda. That's not news, folks. That's libel. That's evil. No one should be trusting that kind of news. So here's what they do, though, in the common law. Here's how the common law has been perverted in my case. That was called getting rid of the evidence of defamation. They say, well, this article is not defamatory, Ron. That's enough to catch you. But okay, they kept on going. They said this article was substantially true. On top of that, not only was it not defamatory, it was substantially true. And they went through and said, oh yes, the article said the Republic of Texas were a peaceful group, and that they rejected violence of any kind, and they met on Saturday, and they talked about a peaceful deliverance from the Union or something like that, and it was all substantially true. It's how is that? The argument here is absurd, because common law says that a gist in the sting of the article, they talk about the gist and the sting, and they say, well, if you read the whole article, and you have to take the whole article and all the attachments, that's what the law says, that's what the common law, case law says. In order to determine the gist and the sting of an article, you have to read the entire thing, and you have to consider every part of it. And then you have to determine if the overall thing is true or not, and whether it's defamatory too, really. See, gist of the sting applies to both things, whether or not it's defamatory and whether or not it's true. Well, you can see where a substantial truth doctrine might hold up. Let's say you say, well, a reporter says, a guy stole $200 and the cops picked him up. And turns out the truth is the guy stole $150. And the reporter reported this guy was a petty thief, that he stole $200 out of the petty cash at his company, and the cops caught him, and he stole $200. Well, truth comes out, he stole $150. Is that story substantially true? Yeah, you can kind of see how, yeah, that's kind of substantially true. He was off by $50, but the guy stole $150, and the cops caught him. So, you know, he was a petty thief. Stole it out of the petty cash. That's the petty thief. Okay. In my case, substantial truth doctrine makes me a member of the Republic of Texas. Can it make me into a frog? Substantial truth, can it convert me into a rabbit? I mean, that's nuts. Can it make a guy who's been speaking against secession for 15 years and has written extensively on it, been on radio shows on it, been reported in national newspapers? Ron Paul wrote an article about secession and how the advantages of it and why it would be a lawful thing. I was compared to it in the same article, or right after it in the same newspaper, speaking about dissolution and why secession is not a good thing. So Ron Paul, who ran for president, everybody knows him. They don't know me. I'm an obscure person. But at least the guy knew me, and he thought it was an important concept, and he wrote about it. And it's not the best article. He didn't quote me very well, but at least he got the idea that it's about secession, not about dissolution, not secession. But I presented all this evidence in court, showing that I even showed them the article, the thing I wrote and read at the meeting. It was all about dissolution, not secession. So the substantial truth doctrine can't make people who are opposed to something into advocates of it. That's not substantially true. And if the derogatory and the defamatory information, which is the things about meeting with Putin as secession and trying to get it, and meeting with far-right confabs and fascists and neo-Nazis, and then becoming part of the right-wing terror threat based on being a right-winger, with all that based on you being the gist and the sting of that, all of that stuff is based on a lie. So if the defamatory information, which he attached, is based upon a lie he told, then the gist of the sting of the article is a lie. And that, in order to have a good case in libel, it has to be false. The story has to be false. You can't be libeled with a true story. You can see that. That's obvious. If they tell the truth about you and it's bad and people have a bad reaction to it, well, tough. They told the truth. Well, this time they didn't tell the truth. Yeah, it was bad and it resulted in bad stuff, but it was a lie. I'm not a secessionist, and I can prove it, and I'm not a member of the Republic of Texas. And I'm not a far-right confabber, and I don't meet with fascists and neo-Nazis, and I'm not meeting with Putin, and I'm not trying to get secession, and I'm not part of the right-wing growing terror threat. All of that is a lie, and it is untrue. So, the gist and the sting of the article is that it's false, it's not substantially true, and that it's defamatory. But they've gotten it thrown out. And now I'm in the Supreme Court of Texas, and even the Supreme Court of Texas has denied my petition for review. And now, what is pending is I filed this motion for rehearing. Now that's what this is, and that's where we are. This is now pending. They haven't ruled on this yet. But so this is how they're perverting this law. And I want to talk about one other thing in here. So I'm going to wrap this up kind of with how this ironical thing has happened in Houston. The Houston Chronicle got this beautiful anchor lady, Scarlett Fakar, F-A-K-H-A-R, got her fired for expressing her freedom of speech on her personal Facebook page. And I sued a Houston Chronicle reporter for libel, and you know what? He claims he was using his freedom of speech. Well, you see, I complained from day one in the suit when they first filed a response to it in their motion that this guy wasn't expressing his freedom of speech. This guy was a news reporter. There's no freedom of speech in here. He cannot be a participant. That's what they got. That's what they got the beautiful anchor woman fired for, was expression of freedom. The Chronicle didn't fire Dylan Baddour. They claimed, though, that he was expressing his freedom of speech. Well, if he was, why didn't they fire him? You see? See how that works? This is going on right now. Going on right now in Houston, Texas. Yeah. Beautiful Fox anchor woman, Fox News, right there in Houston, on November 17th, 2015, 16 actually, just recently, 2016, gets fired for expressing freedom of speech about news she covers. Well, if Dylan Baddour was expressing his freedom of speech on the meeting that he met, that he covered on me, well, the Houston Chronicle should have fired him immediately. Right, because they're not supposed to do that. But what do? They turn around and say, oh no, we got to file this motion to dismiss based on the fact that he was expressing his freedom of speech. No, he wasn't. He wasn't giving his opinion about anything. He was reporting facts about us. Just so happened, though, he told lies, and the facts were false. That's when you get into libel. You tell wrong facts, you lie about the facts, and they're defamatory, you got a libel suit. And that's the point of the act. It's supposed to protect people like me when they get defamed by a bunch of lies and with bad stuff and expose you to public hatred, ridicule, and contempt. Well, I'm going to tell you what, I don't know what would be more defamatory and more hateful than to say that somebody ought to be sent to Gitmo for the rest of their life and be waterboarded. Now, I'm just telling you, I don't think that ought to be the law in the state of Texas or anywhere else in the world. I mean, what are we turning this thing into? You know, we used to talk about communist China and communist Russia and all this stuff and all the terrible things, the lack of freedom. What? This country's turning into the same piece of trash. I mean, this is what do we do? What is the law? Well, you know, now we got fake news that writes fake stories like this. And then we got the fake law to protect fake news. Is that where we want to go in Texas? Even if we haven't, I don't care if the thing's dissolved or not, I'm still a citizen of it. And I think I ought to be given the correct law under whatever it is that's here. I don't think that anybody ought to be treated like this. I think the Houston Chronicle, I think Hearst Communications ought to be slapped. And let me tell you, if the news media came up with this term, fake news, trying to make anybody that could that would embarrass their stupid stories, their lies and everything, they call those other people fake stories, fake news. Well, they thought it up. Now, I'm saying, if we're serious about fake news, if anybody's serious about it, we got a case right here in Texas. It's my case. Avery versus Dylan Baddour and Hearst Communications Incorporated. If we're going to do something about fake news, we can do it right here in the Texas judiciary, and we can do it right now. We can overturn the Fourth Court of Appeals and the local trial court, and we can have this thing right back down here in trial court, and we can find out with a jury of my peers, 12 members of my community, whether or not that thing is defamatory or not, and whether or not that that I've been harmed by being called a terrorist that needs to be sent to Gitmo. Well, we ought to be able to figure that out. And I tell you what, that would calm down some of this fake news stuff we're getting out of the news media today. These guys are running around they are totally unfettered in any way. They have no discipline, and nobody disciplines them. So we ought to do something about that. And I don't think it's fair for one Fox News anchor to get fired when she didn't harm anybody. She didn't defame anybody. Nobody claimed she did, and she lost her job for expressing her freedom of speech. And Dylan Baddour tells lies and hurts me with them, and he keeps his job. But he's the same kind of thing. He's not a commentator, and neither was Scarlett. Scarlett's not a commentator, and neither was Dylan. One of them gets fired and didn't harm anybody. The other one harmed somebody. They keep their job, and they punish me. They make me pay every cent I got left to prevent me from ever protecting my name again using the law. I tell you, this is not right, people. And I'm going to tell you who's backing a lot of this stuff. The Freedom of Information Foundation of Texas. You can go to it online. It's FOIFT.org. You go to that and you're going to find who is supporting this Texas Citizen Participation Act, which is a slap in the face of the citizens of Texas. It's a safe haven for big news corporations and big businesses. They're hiding under it when they hurt people. And I tell you, a lawyer that's discovered this, he wrote a big paper on it, saying that very thing. His name is Landon A. Wade, and he's just coming out of Texas Tech Law School, and he's pretty sharp on this stuff. And he wrote a very good, it's written in the Texas Tech Law Review. It exposes this stuff. And if you go to that Freedom of Information Foundation Texas.org, you're gonna see who all these backers are. They're all a bunch of newspaper outfits, newspapers, televisions. That's who's supporting all this stuff. They're getting all the protection from the state. So fake news is being protected by fake law, all supported by big major corporations and lawyers. I don't think this is where we ought to go. We ought to stop some of this stuff. We ought to go back. We ought to clean that act up or get rid of it entirely and just go back to trying libel the old-fashioned way right out there in court with 12 members of your community. And so anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it. I believe I think I covered just about everything in it, except one other last thing. I think they ought to do something, because I'm still shown on their website today as a member of the Republic of Texas and a secessionist, and I don't like it. And I think the court ought to do something just to say, you can't do that. I mean, this guy's got something, and you can't just leave it that way. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there and enjoy giving this presentation. And go to my website, postwtc.com/avc.html, and it's got it all right there. And go check out that Freedom of Information Foundation Texas.org. What a joke that is, too. You'll see what all the people are supporting that thing. And anyway, So I'll see you next week. Thank you much.